For years, this Taekook rumor was brushed off as nothing more than a joke. Fans laughed, doubted, and moved on. But over time, small moments, unexpected details, and subtle interactions began to catch ARMY's attention. One by one, the coincidences started to feel harder to ignore. I end this video. We look back at how this rumor started, why so many people dismissed it, and what made fans slowly change their minds. No assumptions, just observations, timelines, and the moments that sparked endless discussion. Watch until the end and decide for yourself what you think really happened. For a long time, it was just another rumor, the kind people scroll past without thinking twice, the kind that makes fans roll their eyes, laugh, and say, "Here we go again." In the world of K-pop, especially within massive fandoms like ARMY, rumors appear every single day. Some are wild, some are harmless, some fade away within hours. Others, however, refuse to disappear. This was one of those. At first, the Taekook rumor didn't feel different from the rest. It was dismissed as fan imagination, overanalysis, or simple coincidence. Many people didn't take it seriously at all. Some even mocked it openly, calling it exaggerated, unrealistic, or unnecessary. And yet, years later, people began to notice something strange. The rumor didn't fade. Instead, it grew quieter and stronger. Not louder, not more dramatic, just harder to ignore. This is not a story about claiming facts. This is a story about patterns, moments, and reactions, and how public perception slowly shifted over time. Because one day, people realized something unexpected. There were simply too many details to brush off so easily. In the early days, Taekook rumors existed in the same space as countless other fan theories. They were born from shared moments on stage, behind-the-scenes clips, playful interactions, and natural chemistry between two members who had known each other for years. Nothing unusual. After all, BTS built their reputation on closeness. They trained together, lived together, grew up together. Emotional bonds were expected, encouraged even. Fans were used to seeing members laugh, hug, tease, and support one another openly. When people began pointing out Taeyoung and Jungkook's interactions, the response was simple: they're just close friends. And for a while, that explanation was enough. Anytime a clip went viral, it was quickly followed by logical responses. "You're overthinking it. They act like this with everyone. Stop reading too much into normal behavior." Most ARMY agreed. In fact, many actively pushed back against the rumor, worried it could cross boundaries or place unfair narratives onto the members. The fandom was protective, and rightfully so. The rumor was filed away under harmless but silly. Case closed. Or so it seemed. In the early days, Taekook rumors existed in the same space as countless other fan theories. They were born from shared moments on stage, behind-the-scenes clips, playful interactions, and natural chemistry between two members who had known each other for years. Nothing unusual. After all, BTS built their reputation on closeness. They trained together, lived together, grew up together. Emotional bonds were expected, encouraged even. Fans were used to seeing members laugh, hug, tease, and support one another openly. When people began pointing out Taeyoung and Jungkook's interactions, the response was simple: they're just close friends. And for a while, that explanation was enough. Anytime a clip went viral, it was quickly followed by logical responses. "You're overthinking it. They act like this with everyone. Stop reading too much into normal behavior." Most ARMY agreed. In fact, many actively pushed back against the rumor, worried it could cross boundaries or place unfair narratives onto the members. The fandom was protective, and rightfully so. The rumor was filed away under harmless but silly. Case closed. Or so it seemed. The shift didn't happen overnight. There was no single moment that changed everything. Instead, it began with small things, moments that weren't dramatic enough to trend worldwide, but consistent enough to make people pause, a glance that lingered longer than expected, a reaction that felt oddly emotional, a sudden change in body language when the other entered the room. Individually, each moment meant nothing, but fans are observant and patient. They started noticing how often these moments involved the same two people, how reactions seemed more intense in certain situations, how silence sometimes spoke louder than words. Still, most people shrugged it off. Coincidences happen until they happen again, and again, and again. Point one of the biggest reasons fans began rethinking the rumor wasn't what happened, but when it happened. Certain interactions occurred during emotionally significant periods. Major career transitions, personal milestones, times of visible stress or vulnerability. Fans noticed how support appeared at just the right moments. Not loudly, not publicly, but subtly. A presence, a look, a quiet reassurance, and one could prove intention. But timing has a way of raising questions, because coincidences are random. Patterns are not. At some point, the joke slowed down, not because everyone suddenly believed the rumor, but because dismissing it became harder. People began saying things like, "I don't know what it is, but something feels different. I still don't believe anything, but this is interesting. I used to laugh, but now I'm not so sure." This was the turning point, not belief, curiosity, and curiosity is dangerous to mockery. One of the biggest discussions centered around body language, not exaggerated gestures, not fan service moments on stage, but reactions when they weren't supposed to be noticed. Fans pointed out changes in posture, eye contact, physical distance. Moments where one seemed hyper-aware of the other's presence or absence. Again, no conclusions, just observations, and observation is safe. Sometimes, what didn't happen mattered more than what did. Moments when interactions were noticeably avoided, times when distance replaced closeness. Fans asked a difficult question. If nothing changed, why did behavior change? No one had an answer. But silence became part of the evidence fans discussed, not as proof, but as context. Point one clip is easy to ignore. Point 10. Clips? Still manageable, but when fans compiled years of moments into timelines, something unexpected happened. People who had rolled their eyes before started watching until the end. Not to believe, but to understand why the rumor wouldn't die. The evidence didn't shout. It accumulated, and accumulation changes perception. Responsible fans made an important distinction. They stopped saying, "This proves something," and started saying, "This is why people talk." That shift mattered. It allowed discussions without forcing conclusions. It respected boundaries while acknowledging curiosity, and that balance made the conversation safer and more compelling. Every fandom has rumors, but this one survived for a reason, not because it was dramatic, but because it evolved. It adapted, matured, and became quieter over time. And quiet rumors are often the hardest to dismiss. At the end of the day, fans are storytellers. They connect, analyze moments, and search for meaning, not out of obsession, but affection. The Taekook rumor became less about truth and more about interpretation, and interpretation belongs to everyone. Today, opinions are split. Some still laugh, some remain curious, some choose not to engage at all, and all of those responses are valid, because no one truly knows more than what is shown publicly. Maybe the reason this rumor lasted so long isn't because it became real, but because it never needed to. It sparked discussion, it encouraged observation, it reminded fans how deeply people care, and sometimes that's enough. Whether you believe it, doubt it, or simply find it interesting, the story itself is worth understanding, not because of what it claims, but because of how many people stopped rolling their eyes and started paying attention. What made this rumor unusual wasn't that people believed it. It was that even the skeptics couldn't stop watching. People who had once dismissed Taekook discussions began quietly clicking on videos, not to argue, but to observe. They stopped commenting. They stopped mocking, they watched, and that shift mattered more than belief ever could, because skepticism doesn't disappear when evidence is weak. It disappears when evidence becomes interesting. Suddenly, reactions changed from, "This is ridiculous," to, "I don't know what to think anymore." That sentence alone marked a huge transformation. Point one of the strongest points fans discussed wasn't intensity, but consistency. Moments between Taeyoung and Jungkook weren't explosive. They didn't dominate stages or steal spotlights. Instead, they appeared steady,
Familiar.
almost routine, and routine behavior is harder to fake. Fans noticed how comfort seemed natural, not performed. How reactions looked unplanned. How expressions changed in ways that didn't align with scripted content. Still, no claims, just consistency. And consistency over years raises questions no single clip ever could. Another detail that made people pause was emotional awareness. Fans pointed out moments where one seemed to instinctively respond to the other's mood. Even before words were spoken, a glance at the right time, a softened expression, a pause when laughter faded. These weren't dramatic gestures meant for cameras, they were quiet responses, the kind people often don't realize they're making, and once fans noticed them, they couldn't unsee them. Interestingly, some of the most discussed moments weren't major events. They were ordinary, waiting backstage, standing in silence, walking without talking, moments with no dialogue. No music, no spotlight, and yet, fans replayed them endlessly, because when nothing is happening, everything becomes more visible. Then came another phase that confused everyone: distance. There were periods when interaction seemed reduced, where eye contact felt avoided, where physical closeness shifted. Some fans interpreted it as normal change. Others saw it as growth. A few noticed something else entirely, not absence, but awareness. Distance, when intentional, can be just as noticeable as closeness, and fans debated this endlessly, not with certainty, but with curiosity. Unlike many rumors that tear fandoms apart, this one created a surprisingly balanced divide. Why? Because most discussions were framed as interpretation, not truth. People learned to say, "This is how it looks to me," instead of, "This is what it is." That language made all the difference. It kept conversations open, and SAFED BTS evolved, concepts changed. Music matured, personalities grew, and yet, the rumor adapted rather than disappeared. IT didn't rely on one era or one style. It survived comebacks, hiatuses, solo activities, and public shifts. That longevity fascinated people, not because it proved anything, but because it refused to become outdated. At some point, fans stepped back and asked a deeper question: why does this matter so much? And the answer wasn't about romance or confirmation. IT was about connection. Fans felt invested because the moments felt human, quiet, imperfect, real. And in an industry built on perfection, real moments stand out. Another detail fans discussed was editing. On-stage moments can be curated, content can be scripted, but raw footage, behind-the-scenes clips, unfiltered reactions, told a different story. Fans noticed how certain interactions weren't highlighted by production. They happened in the background, unnoticed by cameras, except by fans, and those moments carried weight. Despite everything, nothing was ever confirmed. NO statements, NO clarifications, NO acknowledgments, and strangely, that silence kept things grounded. Because without confirmation, the rumor stayed in the realm of observation, not fact, and that's why it remained monetization safe, discussion-based, and endlessly debatable. Early discussions were loud and chaotic. Later discussions became thoughtful. People referenced timelines, compared reactions, cross-checked contexts. The rumor matured alongside the fandom, and maturity changes tone. The biggest shift happened when fans stopped asking, "Is it real?" and started asking, "Why does it feel this way?" That question doesn't demand answers. It invites reflection. Some fans made an important distinction. Shipping imagines, storytelling observes. The Taekook rumor survived because it leaned toward storytelling. Moments were described, not invented. Reactions were analyzed, not exaggerated. And that made all the difference. Even today, videos about this topic continue to trend, not because they promise answers, but because they offer perspective. People click because they want to understand why so many others are still talking. Curiosity drives views, not certainty. The most successful creators learned one rule: you can discuss moments without crossing lines, and audiences responded positively to that approach. Respect builds trust. At its heart, this rumor isn't about labels. It's about emotional connection, perceived, interpreted, or imagined, and humans are wired to notice connection. Especially when it feels genuine. They didn't stop because they believed. They stopped because dismissing it felt lazy. There was too much to consider, too many moments to acknowledge. Ignoring it no longer felt honest. Maybe the story was never about Taekook alone. Maybe it reflects how deeply fans engage, how carefully they observe, how meaning is built from moments. And maybe the real reason people stopped laughing is because sometimes Even rumors deserve a second look. In the end, this story doesn't ask you to believe anything. It only asks you to notice, because when everyone rolls their eyes but the evidence keeps stacking up, curiosity becomes impossible to